am Chris-Shana, bringing you the latest news headline. Report addressing the challenges within school systems. Principals have stepped forward to discuss the implementation of behaviorism as a potential solution to the ongoing teaching problems, with concern ranging from students' discipline issues to the academic performance disparities. Educators are increasingly turning to behaviorist principles as a means of fostering a more conducive learning environment. Stay tuned as we unravel the details behind the developing story.
Hi, I'm Principal Mandarin, and I'm deeply committed in addressing the challenges our schools are facing when it comes down to teaching. So as a principal from the southern region, I suggest that our country, or teachers on the whole, uses the behaviorist theory. Now, behavior can be referred to as how one conducts themselves, and it also pertains to a person's activity and is defined using action. It is a dynamic aspect of a person. Now, when you claim that someone is furious, you have not defined the person's actions, you have simply labeled it. If you can identify what a person says or does while furious, you have identified behavior. Behaviorism is a learning theory, and it holds all behaviors which are learned by conditioning, which take place through contact with the environment. Now, behaviorists think that environmental cues influence human actions. Now, Mr. John E. Watson was an American psychologist who codified and popularized behaviorism, an approach to psychology that he believed was limited to the objective. Experimental examination of the relationships between environmental events and human behavior. He also formulated his initial views on behaviorist psychology in the epoch-making paper, Psychology as a Behaviorist Views It, in 1913, saying that psychology is the study of human behavior, which, like animal conduct, should be studied under rigorous laboratory settings.
Hi, I am Chris-Shana Black, Northern Division of Schools Principal. My colleagues across the island has been mentioning the drastic implementation of behaviorism theory within the school system, and I 100% agree. There are three underpinning principles of this theory. They include the stimulus and response theory, classical conditioning, and social learning theory. So the stimulus and response theory. So despite potential criticisms of his methods, Edward Thorndike, an American psychologist and pioneer in the era of educational psychology in the late 19th and early 20th century, is largely regarded for his breakthrough study on the learning process. So Thorndike's study centered on the relationship between stimulus and reaction, sometimes known as the SR theory of psychology. In his studies, he conducted several trials on animals, mainly cats and dogs, to explore their behavior and learning processes. Thorndike's purpose was to understand how animals learn and how that knowledge may be applied to people, particularly in the realm of education. Thorndike's theory of learning, often known as the rule of effect, argues that conduct followed by a good consequence is more likely to be repeated, whereas actions followed by a negative consequence is less likely to be repeated. This hypothesis is founded on the concept that learning is a gradual process that involves trial and error. Thorndike felt that learning happens when there is a relationship between this stimulus and the reaction, which strengthens the repetition. So, colleagues, it is important that we implement the Thorndike's laws of effect within our school systems. As for the classical conditioning, in the early part of 20th century, a Russian physiologist, Ivan Pavlov, was studying the digestive system of dogs when he noticed an interesting behavioral phenomenon. The dogs began to salivate when the lab technicians who normally fed them entered the room, even though the dogs had not yet received any food. It's weird, right? But Pavlov realized that the dogs were salivating because they knew that they were about to be fed. The dogs had begun to associate the arrival of the technicians with the food that soon followed their appearance in the room. With this team of researchers, Pavlov began studying this process more detailed. He conducted a series of experiments which, over a number of trials, dogs were exposed to a sound immediately before receiving the food. He then systematically controlled the onset of sound and the timing of the delivery of the food, and recorded the amount of dog salivatation. Initially, dogs salivated only when they saw or smelled the food, but after several pairings of the sound and the food, the dogs began to salivate as soon as they heard the sound. The animals had learned to associate the sound with the food that followed. Finally, social learning theory. SLT is commonly referred to as the bridge between classical learning theory, which is behaviorism, and cognitive approaches. This is because it focuses on how mental factors affect learning. Unlike Skinner, Bandura believes that humans are active information processors who evaluate the relationship between their actions and consequences. Albert Bandura, a well-known Canadian-American psychologist, developed social learning theory and self-efficacy. His fundamental work on observational learning, notably the Bobo doll experiment, shifted the emphasis of psychology theory away from behaviorism and towards cognitive processes. Observational learning is an important component of social learning theory, in which people learn and adapt behaviors by observing others. This process frequently entails modeling after people who are comparable, high status, knowledgeable, rewarded, or caring in our lives. Children watch how people around them behave in different ways. This was demonstrated during the famous Bobo doll experiment. Individuals observed are referred to as models. Children in society are surrounded by various influencing models, including parents, TV personalities, peers, and instructors. These models give instances of behavior to study and emulate, such as masculine and feminine, pro and antisocial, and so on. Children pay attention to certain of these persons, which are the models, and imitate their behavior. They may subsequently emulate or reproduce the behavior that they watched. They may do so regardless of whether the behavior is gender acceptable or not, but there are various mechanisms that increase the likelihood that a youngster would repeat the behavior that society considered proper for its gender. Therefore, educators, I implore us all to implement these underpinning principles within our Jamaican classrooms so that we can improve our education system.
This is Principal James reporting live from the Eastern Division of Schools, and today I'll be discussing two positive strategies that may be implemented from the behaviorist theory in our schools to assist our students in grasping their knowledge and proper learning. I'll also be discussing today one negative impact that the behaviorist theory may have on our students in our schools. So Thorndike described learning as the strengthening between connections. The strengthening of connections between a stimulus and a response. The relationship between a stimulus and a response becomes stronger each time it is reinforced. And reinforcement can either be negative or positive. So, based on the four theories that Thorndike implemented, they are the law of effect, the law of readiness, and the law of exercise. There are four principles, but today we'll only be discussing three of those four. The law of effect. The law of effect states that responses that result in positive outcomes are likely to be repeated, while responses that result in a negative outcome are less likely to be repeated. So in a classroom setting, in practicing the law of effect, it is important for educators to offer immediate feedback to their students. After a task is completed, it is important to offer immediate feedback, as this serves as a reward or consequence association, which in turn guides learners towards the desired behavior. So when you give a student assignments, it's important that if you have the time, you mark them and return them as quickly as possible, as this helps the students in knowing what they're doing this work for. It encourages them, it motivates them to want to learn, because when you give them immediate feedback, they saw what they did, they saw the results of their work. So it's always important to give. So onto the law of readiness. The law of readiness entails the view that learning is most effective when the learners are ready and motivated to do so. It is important for educators to ensure that the learners are ready and motivated to learn before they start or commence a new topic. A teacher can do this by giving the students responsibility to gather information before commencing the new topic. So at the end of your lesson you say, class, at the next class we'll be discussing so and so. Please do your prior research on the topic. So when the students come back to school in class, they are ready to learn because they have done their prior knowledge, they're motivated to share their information with the rest of their classmates. So additionally, before the start of a new lesson, a teacher can also come prepared. Like she can play a short video based on the topic that will be taught, the students, to pique the interest of the students, because when they see the video, they're interested, they're wondering what's coming next, what is the teacher going to talk about. So this motivates the students to learn. The teacher could also engage in a short discussion with the class, trying to pull prior knowledge from them in order to engage them and get them ready and motivated to learn. The last law is the law of exercise. The law of exercise exaggerates that the more something is practiced by a person, the better he or she is able to retain that knowledge, use it or lose it. In order for students to hold fast to the knowledge that they acquire in the classroom, they must interact with the information. Hence why it is important for educators to provide many in-class activities, quizzes, assignments, and also give the students homework, because learning also takes place in the home. The second principle that we will be discussing today is the social learning theory. The social learning theory can be used in the classroom to gain positive learning outcomes in various ways, including encouraging and teaching desirable behaviors in the classroom through positive reinforcement and rewards. For example, if a teacher states the topic that will be taught at her next class, and a student takes it up on his or herself to go home and do their prior research, and during the class session, which Miss is introducing that new topic, this student comes and she raises her hand and she says, "Oh Miss, I did my research and this is what I found." When that teacher gives that student that recognition and praise, this encourages that student to continue doing what he or she has been doing, and additionally, her peers that saw this praise that she got, the reinforcement, will be encouraged to follow suit and do their research and interact more with the content. In order for observational learning to be successful, the observers or the students must be motivated to reproduce the behavior. Students can be motivated to reproduce a certain behavior or act in many different ways. One of the ways that are outstanding and which our teachers use in our classroom and should practice using this strategy more is peer work and group work, because learning takes place through peers. Pairing a student that is not so strong with a student of a higher level of learning, this will motivate the student that is not so strong at learning, because his or her peer, seeing how that peer go about doing their work or does their work on time and do their research, this will in turn motivate that student as well that wasn't so strong at first to start doing her research, ensuring that she's doing things on time. all the stuff like that. So pairing students who are struggling with students that are higher in their classroom is one of those principles that is very important in teaching and learning in a classroom. Now for the negative point, classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is learning through association. So in other words, two stimuli are linked together to produce a new learned response. In classes, when students try to participate in content, it is important for the teacher to remain positive. Because if a student associates a negative response from a teacher with trying to complete a given task, other peers that were willing to try may become unwilling due to the response provided by the teacher. So teachers, I implore you, it is important for you to encourage your students and remain positive. So if a student tries, the student was willing to try. You picked on that student, and when the student gives you an answer that was not the answer that you were looking for, you don't go about shunning the students and shaming the students and embarrassing the students, because so this can cause damage to the students' self-esteem. This discourages them. This will cause the student to not like your class. The student won't like you because they associate this negative vibe with your class and you because of how you answered or go about responding to a situation when a child answered a question not in the way that you were expecting. And this also discourages the peers of that child from trying to raise their hand, because a child that was initially willing to try, when she sees that negative response from you as the teacher, she was going to take back her hand down because she does not want to be ashamed or put to shame or say she does. She doesn't want that. So I implore you, teachers, encourage your students. Be aware of how you approach certain situations in your class. Do not go about shunning students and embarrassing them because they don't know a specific topic. Always try to remain positive.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Principal Gilling from the Southern Division of Schools, and recently I've conducted a research on all schools in the region, and I realized that the teachers in the classroom are struggling when it comes on to the teaching strategies, right? So I have implemented some strategies that the teachers can use in the classroom to help students. All right, so two strategies I came up with. One, repetitive practice and Q&A session. So in the repetitive practice, teachers would give students the opportunity to practice learned material, and the learned material will be anything taught in the class, anything done by the teacher. Alright? So teachers may employ various methods such as educational games, such as Kahoot, drills, quizzes, and the list goes on and on and on. The other strategy is Q&A sessions. So asking students that require them to apply learned material, and again, learned material will be anything taught by the teacher, anything done by the teacher, so forth. And so students would give answers based on questions asked by the teachers, and based on their responses, the teacher would then give feedbacks. So this strategy helps students to understand the content or the learned material, and it also helps the teacher in general to correct any misunderstanding. So anything that was not explained clearly in the class, the teacher can use this session to clear it up. All right, 6B. So we're going to wrap up today. We're going to move on to our Q&A session. I want all books to be closed. No peeping, no peeping.
Yes, teacher. Yes, please.
I'm going to be asking some questions based on what we discussed in class today, and anyone is free to answer. All right?
Yes, please.
All right. So the first question is, what is a verb?
A verb is an action word.
And what are you
A verb is an action word, teacher.
All right. Anyone else would like to try? Go ahead, Gabby.
A verb is a word that describes the subject of a sentence.
Good job. All right. Next question. So we look at two forms of verbs. Can anyone tell me one form? Go ahead and answer your hand up first.
We have present participle. That's all? You want one alone? Okay, teacher.
And there's another one. Anyone else? Go
Past
ahead.
participle.
All right. So in the present participle, what the words are always in one. End in one. End with one. Go ahead and answer.
ing.
All right. Can you give me two examples?
Teacher, like eating or crying or talking.
Good job. And we have the past participle. And these words always end with ed. Can you give me two examples?
Talk, cried, run.
No.
That is incorrect. Sweat.
Correct. Alright, so that wraps up our Q&A session for today. And what I want you all to do, go home in your spare time, ensure that you go over the work. I don't want you to go home and put down the books, right? So when I come next class and I ask questions, you're able to answer. Alright? So you have yourself a nice day, and I will see you next Tuesday, same time, same place.
Bye, teacher. Bye.
That was Teachers in Education. Up next, Students Corner.